Hidden CEO picks up pregnant woman walking in the rain and changes her life forever. The deluge hammered the city, transforming the asphalt into slick, obsidian streams. Alara sought meager shelter under the bakery's overhang, the cloying aroma of stale pastry a poor consolation. Her jacket, saturated and heavy, clung to her, amplifying the bone-deep chill. Each gust threatened to tear the canvas loose, while the street lamps dissolved into hazy aureoles in the torrential downpour. She cinched the scarf tighter. A futile attempt against the onslaught. Every few heartbeats, she risked. A glance at the avenue, praying for the sight of a bus, a cab, any escape from this dismal scene. But the tempest had seemingly devoured the metropolis, leaving her marooned. Water sloshed in her shoes with each nervous shift. Her usually disciplined hair was a dark, wet curtain plastered against her brow, and a familiar wave of sickness washed over her. A frequent visitor these past weeks, she steadied herself, pressing a palm to her stomach. She needed home, dryness, and employment. The word resonated. With the weight of the storm itself, the bakery had been a slim chance before this cataclysm, and now felt utterly beyond reach. Then, twin beams lanced through the gloom. Alara squinted, momentarily blinded that a dark sedan eased alongside the curb. Hesitation warred with desperation. Cars like that seldom paused for women in her condition, soaked and despondent. On streets like this, the passenger window descended, revealing a man with gentle eyes and an uncertain smile. Brutal weather, he observed, his voice a low timbre that somehow rose above the din. Need a lift? Alara recoiled slightly, clutching her bag. I have no fare. He chuckled, a warm sound that chipped away at her anxiety. Forget about it, I'm headed that direction. Just thought I'd offer a reprieve. He indicated the passenger seat. I'm Jay. Alara lingered for another moment, caught between caution and need. Usually so self-reliant, so careful, but the cold was beginning to numb her, and the prospect of another hour in this downpour was unbearable. Alara, she conceded. Alara Rodriguez. She dashed around the car, shivering, and sank into the supple leather. The interior was a dry, heated haven. Jay merged back into the traffic flow, the wipers fighting a losing battle against the persistent rain. Where to, Alara? He inquired, his gaze briefly touching hers. She recited her address, a modest apartment across town. Silence filled the space, broken only by the rhythmic drumming of the rain and the car's subdued purr. Alara felt acutely self-conscious, aware of her bedraggled state and clammy clothes. So, Jay began, breaking the quiet. What brings you out in this mess? Alara sighed, the burden of her recent misfortunes heavy on her. A job interview, she confessed, barely audible. And it was fruitless, she admitted, avoiding his eyes. They'd already filled the position. That's tough, Jay responded, his tone genuinely sympathetic. What kind of work were you seeking? Bakery assistant, Alara murmured, her fingers worrying the strap of her bag. I used to work at a bakery downtown, but it shuttered a few months back. My husband, Miguel, was a construction worker. He suffered an accident. Her voice broke, and she swallowed hard, battling back tears. Jay remained silent, driving with a quiet understanding. After a pause, Alara continued, her voice thick with emotion. He fell out a week later. He was gone. And then the bakery. Everything just crumbled. She stared out the window, watching the rain smear the city lights into vibrant streaks. I've been searching for something, anything, but it's been a struggle. She hesitated, then added softly, and now, I'm pregnant. Jay's grip tightened on the steering wheel. Wow, he said, surprised. That's quite a lot to contend with. Alara nodded, a single tear escaping and carving a path down her cheek. I know, she whispered. I don't know what I'm going to do. The car slowed as they neared her street. Alara felt a sudden swell of gratitude for this stranger who'd extended a hand in the storm. She didn't know why he'd stopped, knew nothing about him, but his act of kindness would stay with her, a helping hand, a hidden life. The minivan, a veteran of countless road trips and near misses, gave a final, rattling sigh before succumbing to silence in front of what could charitably be called a building in recovery. A weather-beaten sign, barely clinging to its post, announced Bethany's Haven. Alara's resolve wavered, the sunlit dust motes seeming to mock her fragile hopes. Julian switched off the ignition, the sudden quiet amplifying the dilapidated state of their surroundings. "Well," he announced, a forced cheerfulness coloring his tone, "this is it." The cutoff of the engine allowed a chill to settle in the car as the warm air from the heater dissipated. Alara unfastened her seatbelt, eyes fixed on the spiderweb cracks lacing the asphalt. The quiet, "thank you," escaped her, the words feeling paltry against the monumental debt she owed him. "Don't mention it," he replied, his hand hovering tentatively. "Listen, I'll check in. Make sure you're doing all right, yeah?" Surprise flickered across her face. "You really don't have to." His smile faltered. "I know that I want to, though. Give me a number where I can reach you." A wave of vulnerability threatened to drown her. Bearing herself felt akin to standing exposed in a gale. Yet his sincerity acted as a windbreak. She unearthed a crumpled scrap from her pocket and jotted down the shelter's number. "Ask for Alara Rodriguez." He accepted the paper, his fingers grazing hers, sending an unexpected shiver through her. "I will look, Alara." He hesitated, searching. "It gets better that you're stronger than you think." She managed a weak smile. "I have to be, don't I?" After a prolonged, searching gaze, she exited the vehicle, bracing against the sharp wind that he watched her trek toward the shelter, her frame shrinking against the elements, until she vanished within. The silence that followed was not only physical, but echoed within his heart. The contrast was jarring as he descended into the sterile, subterranean garage of Thorn Industries. Polished surfaces, the hushed whir of charging electric vehicles, his penthouse, with its panoramic cityscape views, minimalist decor radiating affluence, and pristine, filtered air, felt less like home and more like a curated display. He poured a measure of aged scotch, its amber depths offering little solace to his troubled mind. The image of Alara, her quiet determination a stark contrast to her circumstances, replayed in his thoughts that he swirled the glass, the light dancing across the liquid, questioning whether his charitable efforts truly made an impact, or if he was simply assuaging his own guilt. The board meeting commenced shortly. Harding, the thought sent a shiver down his spine. The boardroom air hung heavy, a suffocating blend of apprehension and veiled ambition reflected in the faces around the mahogany table, all except Harding, whose impeccably groomed silver hair and icy gaze projected an unnerving self-assurance. "Good morning, everyone," Julian began, his voice betraying none of the turmoil within. "Let's begin." The standard reports droned, numbers dissected, projections scrutinized. Yet, the undercurrent of disquiet remained. Finally, Harding leaned forward, hands forming a pointed steeple. "Julian," he began, his voice smooth as polished stone, "there is concern regarding the recent quarterly performance. While still profitable, growth has faltered. Shareholders are growing impatient." Julian met Harding's stare head-on. "We are aware of the challenges, Mr. Harding, that we have strategies in place." "Strategies?" Harding scoffed, a sardonic smile playing on his lips. "Or distractions? Whispers circulate, Julian. Whispers of extracurricular pursuits. Pursuits that might be diverting your focus from core operations." Julian felt a cold seep into his bones. How much did Harding know? He maintained an impassive facade. "Thorn Industries remains my priority, Mr. Harding. Other endeavors are personal." "Personal endeavors that might be construed as a conflict of interest," Harding persisted, his tone sharpening. "Some question your dedication to maximizing shareholder value. Perhaps a transition in leadership is warranted." The room crackled with veiled threats. Julian recognized the implication. A power play, a potential takeover. He clenched his jaw, his grip tightening on the table's edge. He had nurtured this company from its infancy, invested every ounce of his being into its success. He would not allow Harding, or anyone else, to usurp it. "Thorn Industries stands strong," Julian countered, his voice resonating with conviction, his gaze unyielding. "And I intend to ensure it remains so." Harding's smile broadened, yet his eyes remained devoid of warmth. "Time will tell, Julian. Time will tell." Angels in the shadows. "Davies, I need your discretion," Julian said, the city lights painting streaks across his face as he stared out the window of his office. "There's a young woman. Alara Rodriguez, she's at the St. Jude's shelter downtown. Beatrice Davies, a woman who could extract secrets from stones, simply raised an eyebrow. And, and I want you to ensure she has the best possible care. Anonymously. All of it. Medical, nutritional, whatever she needs that I don't want her to know it's coming from me. Davies folded her hands, her expression unreadable. A charitable donation, then? More targeted than that. I trust your judgment. Just to make sure she's okay. And that she doesn't suffer needlessly. He turned, the weight of the city seeming to press down on him. That's all. Across town, Alara huddled deeper into the threadbare blanket. The shelter was a cacophony of coughs, sobs, and the rhythmic clang of metal trays in the makeshift cafeteria. The air hung thick with the smell of disinfectant and despair. Her stomach churned, not just with morning sickness, but with the gnawing emptiness that even the watery soup hadn't touched. She tried to ignore the stares, the whispers that followed her like a shadow. Asterisk, another mouth to feed, that a burden on the system starred. She'd heard it. All before, even here, where everyone was supposed to be struggling together, there was a hierarchy of misery. The woman in the bunk below hers, gaunt and hollow-eyed, coughed violently. Alara offered her a small, hesitant smile. The woman just glared back, clutching her tattered shawl tighter. Kindness felt like a dangerous commodity here, easily squandered. Later that day, the shelter's nurse, a woman with weary eyes and perpetually chapped hands, examined Alara with a detached air. Blood pressure's low, anemic, you need to eat more protein. I'm trying, Alara mumbled, her voice barely a whisper. Try harder, the baby needs it. The nurse scribbled something on a chart without looking up. There's a prenatal vitamin program through the city. I'll put your name on the list. Might be a few weeks. A few weeks. Alara felt a wave of nausea wash over her. A few weeks could be a lifetime. Meanwhile, in a far more sterile environment, Beatrice Davies was making arrangements. She'd bypassed the standard charitable channels, finding a private clinic that specialized in prenatal care for underserved women. Dr. Ramirez, a woman known for her compassion and discretion, was already on board. Next, Davies contacted a local organic food delivery service, arranging for weekly deliveries of fresh produce and protein to the shelter, ostensibly donated by a concerned citizen. Davies ensured the delivery was specifically marked for Alara. That evening, Alara was summoned to the front desk. A young volunteer, usually brusque and indifferent, handed her a box. This is for you, said it was important. Inside, nestled amongst ice packs, were cartons of fresh berries, Greek yogurt, and a small jar of locally sourced honey. A note, typed on plain paper, read, "Thinking of you." Alara stared at the food, her eyes welling up. She hadn't tasted anything so vibrant, so alive, in months. She cautiously tasted a raspberry, the sweetness exploding on her tongue. A single tear traced a path down her cheek. She didn't know who was responsible for this unexpected act of kindness, but for the first time in a long time, she felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't entirely alone. Jay's visits, Alara's hope. The peeling paint lamented its abandonment on the door of Alara's temporary dwelling, looking especially forlorn in the fading sunlight. Julian, cloaked in his deliberately constructed guise, denim, distressed boots, and a shadowed cap, paused. This was the place, Alara's refuge. Inhaling deeply, he smoothed the paper bag clutched in his hand, then rapped on the door. Alara warily pulled it open, her complexion wan, yet a spark of recognition ignited her gaze. "Jay, hello." He grinned, feigning a nonchalance he couldn't muster. "Hey, Alara. Thought I'd drop in. Brought a few comforts." He lifted the bag, releasing a fragrant promise of citrus and fizz. She retreated a step, granting him entry. The cramped room held minimal furnishings, a narrow bed, a shaky table, and a solitary chair. The atmosphere was thick with the acrid tang of disinfectant layered over lingering cooking odors. Exhaustion etched on her face. Alara eased onto the bed. "You really shouldn't have," she murmured, her voice barely audible. "I'm managing." Julian placed the bag on the table, still battling that relentless nausea. She nodded, a grimace flitting across her features. "Relentless doesn't begin to cover it. This place, it's not exactly a haven for keeping anything down." He began unpacking, positioning the ginger ale and crackers within easy reach. He'd also included herbal tea known for its soothing properties and a small bouquet of lilies, their pure aroma a defiant act against the room's dreariness. Did some research, he announced, handing her the tea. Ginger's supposed to be a champion against queasiness, and, well, I just thought you deserved something beautiful. Tears welled in Alara's eyes. They're exquisite, Jay. Thank you. She drew a long breath, savoring their perfume. Things have been challenging. He perched on the table's edge, wary of its stability. I can only imagine the strain. Look, I know this is a temporary fix, but I want to offer help beyond groceries. Have you considered your plans for after the baby arrives? Alara's shoulders visibly sagged. Honestly, I'm trying not to. It's too daunting. I have no support system, no employment, nothing saved. Julian leaned forward, his tone full of sincerity. But what about your talents? What do you excel at? She hesitated, her gaze averted. I used to. I was quite skilled at baking, primarily cakes that I decorated them elaborately, but that was before. Her voice faded, a cloud passing over her face. Before life intervened, Julian finished softly. All right, so, you possess a valuable skill, that's a cornerstone. What if we built on that? Perhaps you could launch a small-scale venture, even from this space. Offer your cakes online. I'd gladly assist you with constructing a website, procuring initial supplies. Alara regarded him, a glimmer of hope igniting within her. You would do that for me? Absolutely, he affirmed, his voice unwavering. I believe in your potential, Alara. You have a unique offering. For the better part of an hour, they conversed. Julian inquired about her baking background, her prized recipes, the cake of her dreams. He listened intently, providing suggestions and boosting her morale. He even doodled a preliminary logo on a napkin. As she spoke, Alara seemed to visibly bloom, color returning to her cheeks, the weight of weariness diminishing as his departure neared. Alara rose and accompanied him to the doorway. Thank you, Jay, she expressed, emotion thickening her voice. You can't comprehend how much this means to me. Just having someone believe in my capabilities. He gave her hand a gentle squeeze. Anytime, Alara. I'll be back next week. We'll begin sketching out that website. As Julian strode toward his rented compact car, a genuine smile illuminated his face. He felt a lightness he hadn't experienced in ages. This wasn't about acts of charity. It was about authentic connection, empowering someone to rediscover her inner fortitude. The crushing weight of Thorn Industries, the endless meetings, the empty accolades, all seemed distant, inconsequential. He was simply Jay, providing support to a woman nurturing a dream. Back within her humble room, Alara carefully arranged the lilies within a mismatched glass. She nibbled on a few crackers, the ginger ale calming her churning stomach. She felt a flicker of an emotion she hadn't recognized in quite some time. Budding hope that it was delicate, easily shattered, yet undeniably present. And for now, that was sufficient. She picked up the napkin bearing the sketched logo and traced the lines with her finger, a subtle smile gracing her lips. Perhaps, just perhaps, a brighter future was beginning to dawn, the price of compassion. The spreadsheet glowed on Harding's face, reflecting in the predatory gleam in his eyes. Alara Rodriguez, he muttered, scrolling through a list of transactions. Recipient of several generous donations from Thorn Enterprises Charitable Foundation, disbursed under Julian Thorn's express instruction, starting about 6 months ago. Curious. He leaned back in his ergonomic chair, the leather creaking softly. Rain lashed against the panoramic window of his office, mirroring the storm brewing inside him. He tapped a manicured nail against his teeth. Pull everything. Every receipt, every email, every record associated with Alara Rodriguez and Thorn Enterprises. I want to know what Julian's been up to in his spare time. The team worked through the night, fueled by lukewarm coffee and Harding's thinly veiled threats. By dawn, they had a dossier, photographs, bank statements, even a scan of a handwritten note from Julian to Alara, wishing her well with her pregnancy. It was all meticulously documented, seemingly innocuous, but Harding saw opportunity radiating from it. He thinks he's playing saint, Harding sneered, tossing the file onto his mahogany desk. Thorn, the bleeding heart billionaire, it's pathetic. He paced, the plush carpet muffling his steps. He's so consumed by this do-gooder charade. He's losing sight of the bottom line. He stopped at the window, staring out at the cityscape shrouded in mist. Let's craft a narrative, a subtle one, nothing too overt, at least not yet. He turned back to his assembled team, his voice hardening. We need to paint a picture of Julian as detached, out of touch. He's preoccupied with his pet projects while the company bleeds. We need to plant seeds of doubt in the public's mind, and more importantly, in the board's. The first article appeared online a few days later. A business blog, relatively obscure, but with a surprisingly wide reach among investors. The headline read, "Thorn Enterprises, is compassion clouding vision?" The piece didn't mention Alara directly, but it subtly questioned Julian's focus, hinting at his unconventional philanthropic endeavors and their potential impact on the company's performance. The accompanying photo was strategically chosen, a candid shot of Julian looking tired, his tie loosened, emerging from a community center downtown. Then came a piece in a local newspaper, focusing on the lack of affordable housing in the city. It featured Alara, though her connection to Julian was carefully omitted. She was simply a struggling single mother, facing eviction and desperate for help. The article ended with a pointed question. Are our city's leaders doing enough to address this crisis? The implication was clear. Harding watched the coverage with grim satisfaction that he'd made sure the right people knew where to look, nudging reporters and editors with carefully crafted anonymous tips that IT was a slow burn, a war of attrition, but he was confident it would yield results. He picked up his phone and dialed a number. "The seeds are planted," he said, his voice a low growl. "Now we wait for them to bloom." He hung up and walked over to the wet bar. Pouring himself a generous measure of scotch, he savored the smoky taste, a small victory in the larger battle. Later that evening, Julian scrolled through the news on his tablet, his brow furrowing as he read the articles that he recognized the subtle digs, the carefully chosen words designed to undermine his credibility. That a chill ran down his spine that he knew Harding was behind this. But the sheer audacity of it left him reeling. Using Alara against him, it was a new low. Even for Harding, he closed his eyes, the weight of the world pressing down on him. He'd only wanted to help, to make a small difference. But now, his compassion had become a weapon, wielded against him by a man who saw only profit and power. He felt a familiar wave of disillusionment wash over him, a bitter taste in his mouth. He had to find a way to fight back, to protect Alara and defend his integrity. But how? He felt increasingly trapped in a gilded cage, his good intentions twisted into something ugly and unrecognizable. Premature labor, frantic rush. A vicious spasm seized Alara, pitching her forward. She gasped, clutching her middle. "No, no, not now," she pleaded, the whisper barely audible. 6 weeks early. Panic bloomed in her chest, choking her. Another surge slammed into her, fiercer this time, followed by the unmistakable rush of amniotic fluid. Frantically, she pawed for her phone, trembling so hard it threatened to slip from her grasp. Dialing 911 stretched into an age. The dispatcher's measured tone felt alien against the storm raging within her. She choked out her address. Each word fought for against the encroaching contractions, now a relentless, merciless tide. By the time the paramedics arrived, her hair clung to her face, soaked with perspiration. Her consciousness flickered, vision tunneling. Strapped into the ambulance, her only thought was of the fragile life within, tenaciously clinging to existence. The siren's shriek sliced through the silent turmoil, building inside Julian. He'd been closeted with his CFO, dissecting preliminary Q4 figures, when the message flashed across his screen. Hospital. He understood instantly. He erupted from the boardroom. Leaving a stunned silence in his wake, he sprinted toward his car, a deliberately unremarkable sedan reserved for emergencies, stripping off his bespoke jacket and loosening his tie as he moved. The charade felt particularly oppressive tonight, a stifling reminder of Harding's insidious control. His knuckles whitened on the steering wheel that he had to reach Alara. Traffic was a Gordian knot. Each red light, an agonizing delay. He snaked through lanes, deaf to the chorus of irate horns and glaring headlights. His thoughts spiraled. How was the baby? Alara? He hadn't felt this vulnerable in years, not since. He banished the memory. Now was not the time that he had to focus. He skidded to a halt at the emergency entrance, propelled by pure adrenaline. Abandoning the car in a restricted zone, he burst inside, his gaze sweeping the chaotic scene. Spotting a nurse, he invoked the name Alara had shared with him, inquiring about her location. She directed him to the maternity ward, 3rd floor. The clinical stench of the hospital assaulted him that he found Alara in a small, impersonal room, her face ashen, wires snaked from her to a bank of monitors, their rhythmic beeping a constant, fragile pulse. The physician was speaking to her, his tone hushed and grave. Julian moved to her side, clasping her hand. Her grip was feeble, but her fingers tightened in recognition. "Julian," she whispered, her voice a raw rasp. Too soon. He met her gaze, his own brimming with anxiety. "I'm here, Alara, that you're going to be all right. Both of you." He willed conviction into his voice, despite the dread clawing at him. The doctor turned, his expression professional, though a flicker of concern was visible. "Are you the father?" Julian hesitated, then affirmed. Explanations could wait. "Yes, what's her condition?" "She's in premature labor," the doctor stated, his voice measured. "We're doing everything possible to forestall it, but it's progressing rapidly that we need to be prepared for a potential cesarean." Alara's eyes widened, fear etched on her face. Julian squeezed her hand reassuringly. "Whatever it takes," he declared, his gaze locked on the doctor's. "Just save them." The subsequent hours dissolved into a disorienting vortex of pain, terror, and torturous uncertainty. Julian remained at Alara's side, murmuring encouragement, dabbing her brow with a damp cloth that he watched, powerless, as the contractions intensified, each wave leaching more color from her complexion. The monitors emitted a frantic staccato, a harrowing score to their shared trial that he felt an overwhelming connection to this woman, a bond forged in shared fragility and the elemental battle for life. That he was no longer Julian Thorne, the billionaire CEO entangled in Harding's machinations. He was simply Julian, a man desperate to protect the woman he loved and their child. And he had never felt so utterly helpless. Truth revealed, trust betrayed. Alara cradled Matteo, his feverish body limp against her chest. The sterile scent of antiseptic hung heavy in the air, a stark contrast to the earthy aroma of the small herb sachet Beatrice had gifted her, now tucked uselessly in her pocket. Julian paced the cramped waiting room, his brow furrowed. The rhythmic tap of his shoe against the linoleum a nervous counterpoint to the hushed murmur of the television. He'd insisted on driving them to the hospital, waited with her through the triage, and now, hours later, remained steadfast. She appreciated the support, but a gnawing unease had taken root in her stomach. Something felt off. "Ms. Rodriguez, the doctor will see you now," a nurse announced, her voice crisp and impersonal. Alara rose, a wave of dizziness washing over her. Julian reached out, steadying her with a hand on her arm. "I'll come with you." She managed a weak smile. "Thank you." As they followed the nurse down the corridor, Beatrice Davies appeared, her face etched with concern. "Julian," she said, her voice tight with worry. Then, almost immediately correcting herself, "Mr. Thorne, is everything all right?" The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Alara stopped dead, Matteo stirring fretfully in her arms. "Thorne?" She looked at Julian, his face paling under the harsh fluorescent lights. The easy smile, the comfortable familiarity, suddenly felt like a carefully constructed facade. "Beatrice, what are you doing here?" Julian asked, his voice dangerously low. Beatrice's eyes widened in panic. I just wanted to check in, make sure you were both all right. I brought some water and snacks." She held up a small bag, her hands trembling. Alara felt a surge of anger, hot and fierce. "Thorne? As in Julian Thorne, the billionaire?" The name echoed in her ears, a constant drone she'd heard on the television, read in the newspapers, a symbol of a life so far removed from her own it felt like a fantasy. Julian finally met her gaze, his eyes filled with a mixture of remorse and something she couldn't quite decipher. "Alara, please, let's talk about this later." "Later? You lied to me. You let me believe." Her voice cracked, the weight of the deception pressing down on her. All the kindness, the generosity, the easy companionship, was it all a calculated act? "I didn't lie," he insisted, his voice pleading. I didn't volunteer everything." "Didn't volunteer?" she repeated, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. You let me think you were just another guy, struggling like the rest of us. You saw me scrambling, barely making ends meet, and you played along. That's not fair, Elara. He took a step closer, his hand outstretched. She recoiled, clutching Matteo tighter. Don't touch me. The doctor was waiting. Matteo was sick, but none of it mattered. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical pain. I wanted to help, Julian said, his voice strained. I saw your strength, your resilience. I wanted to make things easier for you, for Matteo. By pretending to be someone you're not. Her voice trembled with unshed tears. Did you think it was some kind of game? Some social experiment? Beatrice hovered awkwardly, her face a mask of guilt. Mr. Thorne, Julian, genuinely cares about you both. Elara, please, believe me. Elara glared at her. You were in on it too? All those little gifts, the helpful suggestions, all part of the charade? The nurse reappeared. Ms. Rodriguez? The doctor is ready. She took a deep breath, trying to regain some semblance of composure. I have to go. Matteo needs me. She turned to Julian, her eyes blazing. I don't know why you did this, what you wanted from me, but whatever it is, you can forget it. I want nothing more to do with you. She pushed past him, her shoulders rigid, the weight of Matteo feeling heavier than ever as she walked away. She heard Julian's voice, desperate and pleading. Elara, please, just let me explain. But she didn't stop. The trust was shattered, the illusion broken. The man she thought she knew was a stranger, a wealthy puppeteer who had played with her life like a game. And she, the unsuspecting pawn, was left to pick up the pieces. The warmth she had felt for him was replaced by a cold, bitter ache, a profound sense of loss that resonated deep within her soul, that a plea for understanding. The diner air hung thick with the smell of frying bacon and burnt coffee, a stark contrast to the sterile environment Julian usually inhabited. He watched Elara, her shoulders rigid, a muscle ticking in her jaw. He knew his words so far had been inadequate, a clumsy attempt to untangle a web of deceit he himself had inadvertently helped weave. Elara, please, he began again, the polished veneer he usually presented to the world cracking. I know this looks terrible, that IT is terrible, but you have to believe me when I say I never intended for you to be hurt, that I wanted to help. He ran a hand through his already disheveled hair. How could he explain the suffocating guilt he carried, the constant awareness of his immense privilege? Growing up, I saw how money could buy anything, except happiness. My parents, they were distant, that I wanted to use what I had to make a real difference, to actually help people, not just write a check and attend a gala. Elara finally met his gaze, her eyes holding a mixture of anger and something else, something he tentatively hoped was curiosity. So you picked me, the struggling single mom? How philanthropic. Her voice dripped with sarcasm that he winced. No, that's not. Harding, he brought your case to my attention, that he presented it as a way to showcase the good my foundation could do. He hesitated, the next part difficult to admit. I was worried that I've seen how these things can be twisted, how genuine efforts can be used for PR. But that's why I insisted on anonymity, that I didn't want it to be about me, about Julian Thorne, the savior. I just wanted you to have a chance. Elara scoffed, pushing a stray strand of hair behind her ear. A chance? You call being paraded around like some charity case a chance? Harding made me feel like I owed him everything. That's exactly what he wanted, Julian said, his voice low and filled with disgust. He wanted to control you, to use you to manipulate me. He's been trying to leverage my foundation for his own gain for years. I just never realized how far he was willing to go. He leaned forward, placing his hands flat on the table. Elara, I swear, I didn't know about any of this until recently. When I saw Harding's press release, the one about your remarkable recovery thanks to Thorne Industries, I was furious that I confronted him. And that's when he threatened me. Elara's eyes widened slightly. Threatened you? How? Julian hesitated. Revealing the extent of Harding's reach felt like admitting defeat, but he owed her the truth. He has compromising information about some past business dealings. Nothing illegal, but damaging. He implied he would release it if I didn't cooperate. He watched Elara process this information, her expression shifting from anger to something akin to pity. He wasn't sure he liked that. So, you're saying you were just trying to be a good guy, but you got played? she asked, her voice softer now. More than that, Julian admitted. I was afraid. Afraid of being exposed. Afraid of the fallout. But seeing how strong you are, how you faced all this, it made me realize I couldn't keep hiding. You inspired me to fight back. He saw a flicker of something in her eyes, a spark of hope perhaps, or maybe just a glimmer of understanding. So, what now? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Now, Julian said, a newfound resolve hardening his features. We expose Harding, together. He reached across the table, his hand hovering, uncertain. If you'll let me help you, I promise you, I'll do everything I can to make things right. Alara looked at his outstretched hand, then up at his face, searching his eyes. The diner's clatter faded into the background as a silent battle raged within her. Finally, she took a deep breath and placed her hand in his. Her grip was surprisingly firm. All right, Thorne, she said, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. Let's see what you've got. Hope restored, a foundation for the future. The Thorne Industries auditorium buzzed, the fluorescent lights amplifying the undercurrent of anxiety. Julian, carved from stillness, remained impassive as Harding's attorney spun his narrative, portraying Julian as impetuous, unstable, a menace to the very enterprise he'd nurtured. Each carefully aimed barb chipped away at his professional standing, his hard-won reputation. Obsessed with safeguarding Alara and rectifying Harding's machinations, he'd left his own flanks exposed. Then, a ripple of surprise washed over the assembly that a hushed murmur spread as Alara, accompanied by a nervous intern, strode deliberately toward the podium. Her appearance was unexpected, unsought. The microphone amplified her voice, cleaving through the lawyer's monotonous recital. My name is Alara Rodriguez. She paused, meeting the predatory gazes of the shareholders gathered like vultures. I am a single mother, and until recently, I was homeless. A collective intake of breath echoed through the space. This was an unscripted detour. Within Julian, a fragile ember of hope began to glow in the oppressive darkness. Mr. Thorne, Alara continued, her voice gathering resonance, conviction radiating outward like a palpable force, found me. Not as a strategic asset, not as a PR opportunity, but because I was in need, he offered succor without fanfare. Extending a hand without demanding adulation, he simply helped. She recounted their first encounter, the unexpected kindness, the practical assistance offered without strings. She spoke of the raw fear and vulnerability of facing motherhood alone and the quiet respect Julian had shown her. There was no mention of financial aid. Its absence amplified her sincerity. Harding Enterprises would have you believe Mr. Thorne is unfit to lead, she stated, her voice ringing with unwavering resolve. But I stand here to declare that he alone is the reason my child will have the chance of a flourishing future. He saw me, a person overlooked by everyone else. And that, esteemed colleagues, is the hallmark of a true leader. A heavy silence descended. Then, a lone clap broke the spell. Another followed, and soon a tidal wave of applause crashed through the auditorium, rattling the very windows. Even some of Harding's partisans looked unnerved, their complexions ashen. The vote proceeded swiftly. The current had shifted. The attempt to unseat Julian failed dismally. Harding, face twisted in a mask of fury, exited in a huff, his retinue struggling to keep pace. The victory tasted like ash that he'd prevailed, but at what cost? He'd exposed Alara to this den of vipers. He was eternally in her debt. Weeks later, light poured through expansive windows in a revitalized building nestled on a quiet city street. The Thorne Foundation for Expectant Mothers. Julian watched Alara, luminous in a simple dress, cheerfully unpacking boxes of infant apparel, her laughter resonating through the brightly colored rooms. It's perfect, Julian, she exclaimed, turning to him, her eyes sparkling with joy. Absolutely perfect. He returned her smile, a genuine expression that crinkled the corners of his eyes, a sensation foreign to him for months. This is all you're doing, Alara. You were the inspiration. The foundation was his endeavor to transmute the recent tumult and manipulation into something meaningful, something enduring, that a sanctuary for vulnerable women, providing prenatal care, skills training, and supportive housing. Alara was its very lifeblood, her innate empathy and lived experience shaping its path. I still find it hard to believe you're entrusting me with so much responsibility, Alara confessed, her voice colored by a blend of thankfulness and awe. I'm not entrusting, but partnering, Julian gently amended. This vision is as much yours as it is mine. He recognized in her an indomitable spirit, a resilience forged in the crucible of adversity that he felt less confined by his gilded existence. He had unearthed a purpose surpassing profit margins and investor approval. A.S. Alara showed him the nursery, meticulously arranged and filled with miniature beds. He felt a profound tranquility enveloping him. The foundation was more than a philanthropic endeavor. It stood as a testament to the transformative power of human connection, a beacon of restored hope, and a bedrock for a future worth investing in. That he remained Julian Thorne, billionaire CEO, yet he was also something more profound. A man who had grasped the genuine meaning of investment, not in ephemeral assets, but in the immeasurable worth of human potential, in the quiet determination of a single mother, and the dormant capacity for kindness within us all.